You've been checking your Social Security statements year after year, assuming everything added up, right? You've paid into the system for decades, trusted it to keep track of your benefits, and believed the numbers were final. But what if I told you that millions of Americans have been shortchanged and they didn't even know it? That's not speculation. That's what's actually happening right now. Here's the reality. Over 2.8 million Americans are owed substantial back pay from Social Security, SSDI, SSI, and VA benefits, some dating back years, even decades. These aren't minor errors. We're talking about checks worth hundreds or even thousands of dollars, sitting unclaimed because beneficiaries were never told they were eligible. And just recently, the official list was quietly released, naming the individuals who are now eligible to receive this forgotten money. The question is your name on it? The Social Security Administration and related agencies have finally admitted to a wave of miscalculations involving payment delays, underpayments, and benefit adjustments that were either overlooked or mishandled. These aren't isolated mistakes. They're systemic issues that affected retirees, disabled Americans, surviving spouses, and veterans, often people living paycheck to paycheck, just trying to stay afloat. And here's where it gets urgent. If your name appears on this new eligibility list, you may be entitled to a back paycheck that could hit your account within weeks, but only if your information is correct and your case gets reviewed in time. That's why staying informed right now isn't optional. It's essential. Stick with me because in this video, I'll walk you through what's really going on, how to find out if you're on the list, and what steps you need to take immediately to claim what's rightfully yours. So now that you know millions of Americans may be owed back pay from Social Security, you're probably wondering how this even happened. How did the system mess up so badly? And more importantly, how can you find out if you're one of the 2.8 million people on the list? The truth is, these mistakes aren't new. What's new is that the Social Security Administration is finally starting to acknowledge them publicly, and that's a big deal. For years, individuals have filed complaints, appealed benefit decisions, or simply assumed their payments were final. But behind the scenes, there were errors in how benefits were calculated, especially when it came to disability reviews, spousal benefits, survivor benefits, and certain cost of living adjustments that weren't fully processed or applied retroactively. Some of the biggest cases involve people who are receiving SSDI or SSI and later qualified for additional Social Security benefits, but the system failed to update their accounts properly. In other cases, folks who had been underpaid for years were never notified, and the amounts just kept rolling over as if nothing was wrong. Now, as audits and corrections are being made, that money, which is legally owed to you, is finally starting to be released. But here's the tricky part. Just because you're eligible doesn't mean a check is guaranteed to show up in your mailbox. The government isn't sending out flashy letters saying, "Hey, we owe you money." Instead, it's up to you to check your account, review your earnings history, and make sure your case is flagged for review. That's why this video is so important. We're going to break down what triggered these back payments, what signs to look for, and how to act fast if you think you're one of the people owed this money. Now, a lot of the back pay issues are tied to what's known as retroactive benefits. Let's say you applied for SSDI back in 2019, but the process took over a year. When you were finally approved, your benefits may have started from the approval date, not the date you were actually eligible. That's a big problem because it means you could have missed out on months of payments. Multiply that by thousands of cases, and you start to see why these numbers are adding up. Then you factor in people who became eligible for spousal or survivor benefits after a spouse passed, but were never given the correct amount, and it adds up fast. And let's not forget about veterans. Many retired service members who also qualified for Social Security were underpaid due to a misalignment between the VA and SSA systems. These mismatches resulted in inaccurate income records, which then affected benefit payouts. It's a complex mess, but thankfully, the latest government audit has identified these problems and action is being taken. The newly released list, which includes over 2.8 million names, is the result of that work. But here's what you really need to know. If you've ever received a notice that seemed off, if your COLA adjustments felt smaller than expected, or if you just feel like your benefits don't reflect your work history, you need to pay attention. People are already starting to receive notifications. In some cases, they're getting phone calls or letters from the SSA requesting updated information. In others, deposits are being made directly into accounts with notes referring to corrected disbursement or retroactive payment. These aren't scams. They're real, but they're being rolled out quietly, and not everyone will be notified at the same time. So you need to be proactive. If you haven't checked your My Social Security account recently, this is the time to log in. Review your earnings record, your payment history, and any notices you've received. Look for any discrepancies or adjustments. You can also call the SSA directly or visit your local office and ask for a benefits review. It might feel like a hassle, but if there's even a chance you're owed back pay, possibly thousands of dollars, it's worth the effort. Now, some folks are wondering whether this is tied to politics or recent legislation, and the answer is partially yes. A combination of federal oversight, new funding for system updates, and pressure from advocacy groups has pushed the SSA to clean up its records. With elections coming up and cost of living concerns dominating the news, there's growing pressure to make things right. And while this isn't a stimulus check in the traditional sense, it could feel like one for the people who receive it. Imagine suddenly getting a $3,200 or even a $6,000 deposit that you had no idea was coming. That's life-changing, especially if you're on a fixed income. There's also a wider conversation happening here about trust. For decades, Americans have trusted Social Security to manage their retirement and disability benefits. But when millions of people are shortchanged, sometimes without even knowing it, that trust starts to erode. That's why transparency is so important right now. People need to know what's going on. They need to know that it's okay to ask questions, to double-check their records, and to demand what they're owed. And let's talk briefly about what happens if you are on the list. First, you may receive a letter in the mail confirming the back pay and explaining the next steps. This letter will typically include a breakdown of the months you were underpaid and the total amount due to you. Next, the funds will either be direct deposited into your account, or if you don't have direct deposit set up, a paper check may be mailed to you. If you receive government benefits through a debit card or other payment method, the funds may also appear there. But remember, if your contact information is outdated or if there's an issue with your payment setup, the process could be delayed. So again, check everything. And here's another thing, even if you're not on the list now, it doesn't mean you won't be added later. The SSA has stated that reviews are ongoing and that more names could be added as audits continue. So it's not just a one-and-done situation. You need to stay updated and stay ready. This isn't the time to ignore your mailbox or delete an email just because it looks official. That letter might be the one that tells you a $5,000 check is on the way. In the meantime, we'll keep monitoring everything for you. My goal is to make sure you don't miss a single update, a single deadline, or a single dollar that's owed to you. If you haven't subscribed yet, now is the time to do it, because we're going to keep tracking these changes day by day and break them down in real, understandable terms. No government speak, no legal jargon, just the facts, the way you need to hear them. So ask yourself, when was the last time you really looked at your Social Security info? When was the last time someone told you that the system may owe you thousands of dollars? It's not something you hear every day, but today, it's real. The opportunity is here. And it could change your financial future if you take action now.